Hello, my name is Dzindzihasvili, and we are back with the second part of the underrated chess opening, Scotch Gambit. So, you see, it's interesting that when I came to this country, I heard of some openings that I never heard of before, because in different parts of the world, different openings they call differently. They don't have the same names everywhere. So, for example, this move B4, they call here orangutan opening, and they don't use in Europe any monkey names for chess openings. What they do is they called it Sokolsky opening. That's the guy that suggested it at first. So, and where I was brought, so this opening that I am covering now, and we are ready to get to part 2, was called the Scotch Gambit with Bishop C4. So, for those who did not watch the part 1, I will give you a quick introduction, because we have to go on with the basic material of the part 2. So Bishop C4, this is, in my opinion, underrated opening. And we covered yesterday Bishop C5, which transposes to Gioco Piano and Italian defense. We covered Bishop B4 check. We covered D6 move, and we covered Knight F6 without playing D5 in this position with Knight G4 and possibly Knight E4. So now we're gonna cover the main continuation, Knight F6, E5, D5, Bishop B5, Knight E4. Remember that theory, opening theory says, is very skeptical about this opening. I'm not claiming that this opening gives white a big advantage, but there is a big advantage, very big advantage, of learning this opening. Because for those people who try to improve in chess, and if you are not trying to improve in chess, then you shouldn't be watching this lecture. So for those who try to improve in chess, this is a perfect example. There's a lot of tactical and positional ideas. So let's get back to the analysis. Knight takes D4, and here basically black has 2 equally good moves. Most common, Bishop D7 and Bishop C5. Let's start with Bishop C5. Well, we should start in random order, so why don't we pick Bishop C5? And on Bishop C5, the best move for white is Bishop E3, because Knight takes C6 is really bad for white after Bishop takes F2, King F1, Queen H4. And white is having serious problems. This is all well analyzed. Actually, you can pick up the information about this variation from any opening book at all. C6, Knight F3, Knight G3 check, and after King takes F2, Knight E4 check, King E3, Queen F2 check, followed by Bishop F5, and black is having very strong attack. Well, practically white is losing here. So we cannot do that. So we cannot take on C6 in this position. So we play Bishop E3, and black here has 3 different continuations. One is Bishop D7, which we are not going to particularly analyze now. We just go quickly run through it because in most of the cases it transposes the main variation. Bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6. And here, instead of castling, I would suggest knight d2 move, because that forces black to take white's knight, and white will take back on d2. Now, why is it forcing? Well, actually, it's not forcing. There is another move, queen h4. But let's see why there are no other moves. f5 will be met by knight takes e4 and knight takes c6, where white simply wins a pawn for no compensation at all. And castling is not that good for the same reason. Knight takes c6. So, and queen e7 will be met by knight takes e4, pawn takes an e6. This is very strong move that gives white very big advantage. For example, if pawn takes, and this is practically the only move, then we play knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, and queen h5 check, followed by queen takes bishop on c5, and white has big advantage due to the pawn structure. Now, why f takes e is the only move? Because if bishop takes d4, then black simply loses a piece. And if bishop takes e6, black also loses a piece after knight takes e6. Now, if queen takes c6, bishop on c5 is hanging. If pawn takes e6, then queen h5 wins the same bishop on c5. And if bishop takes e3, white still ends up with extra piece after knight takes g7, king f8, knight f5, and next move knight takes e3, unless black plays bishop takes f2, king takes, and now on queen f6 simply g4, and on queen c5 check simply knight e3. Now, this is not acceptable for black, so we're going here with knight takes d2, queen takes d2, and we will talk about these types of positions little later in bishop d7 continuation. So other two moves here besides bishop d7, we have here, one is a castle and one is a bishop takes d4. Now, in both cases, white has quite an easy game. On bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, castles, bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, and knight c3. This gives white very solid and stable advantage. After knight g5, which is the best move in this position, and these types of positions, even though they are opposite color bishops, are extremely difficult for black. And I think this is practically lost position. What we're going to do, we're going to castle, put the bishop on c5. Well, for something like that. So just to show you an example type of position. Black has weak pawn on a7, white's bishop dominating here all dark squares, and white has potential of going f4 and f5. It's a very, very big advantage for white. So after knight c3, knight g5 is the best move. And now white has two choices, actually very interesting choices. One is bishop takes g5. This continuation is for those who likes very sharp positions. And after queen takes g5, You cannot castle because of bishop h3. But we play h4, and on queen takes g2, castles. h4 and not f4. f4 is a bad move, because if you castle now, after bishop f5, there is no good way to protect c2 pawn. On rook d2, black is going to take the rook on h1, and after queen d2, black is going to exchange queens, and you didn't give a pawn for attack and then try to exchange queens. That doesn't make sense. So the possible continuation, h4, queen takes, castles long, followed by rook g1. White has quite good compensation. We don't want to go into details. Or a lot simpler continuation. Castle long after knight e6, queen a4. Actually, I had this position, and this is extremely difficult position for black to play. After bishop d7, we go queen a5, make sure we control the c5 square, and now you see white may go something like knight a4, and we have the same type of blockade. Now going back, we're gonna examine one more continuation here, which is a castle. This is extremely sharp continuation, and white has to play extremely accurate. For example, if you play bishop takes c6, bc, and now castle, then black has very, very good position. As you see, comparing to main continuation, black saved tempo and never played bishop d7. And the key move here is queen e8, which gives black advantage. On f4, black is going to go f6. And this is the kind of breakthrough that in normal variations, black is not capable to do. And if we go f3 first, then the key move is knight to d6, followed by knight c4. For example, on f4 now, knight c4, and black has much better position, and taking knight is not good because white loses a piece. So the correct continuation here, after castle, in order to maintain advantage and play for advantage, white must get into complications. Knight takes c6, pawn takes c6, bishop takes c5. Now rook on f8 is hanging, so knight has to take, bishop takes c6. And this position, for a long time, was analyzed as bad for white after bishop takes a6. And bishop a6, not bishop takes a6, of course. And on bishop a6, white has to be extremely careful not to get quickly in a lot of trouble. For example, move like bishop takes a8, nearly loses after queen g5. After queen g5, white has no good way to get out of trouble. Threat is queen takes c5 and queen takes g2 possibly. Now on queen d2, queen takes e5, and on king d1, there's queen takes b2 possibility, or maybe even knight e4. White will get in a lot of trouble. However, this continuation is real bad for black. All you have to do, make a couple of accurate moves. And the accurate move, then very strong move, is knight c3. This practically wins the game. And black has a couple of tries here. Let's look at them. if queen g5, now we play queen d2. And this is interesting. Now, if queen takes g2, bishop takes d5, we'll win the game. Now, after queen moves, we can take the rook on a8, followed by castling on queen side. And after queen takes e5, amazingly, queen e3 gives black terrible position. Now, if queen moves again, we're going to take the rook and castle. And if queen takes e3, this is absolutely terrible position for black because the rook is hanging, and after rook to d8, white may castle. Black is going to lose at least a pawn and having very bad position without queens on the board, without any counterplay at all. And another try here is d4 instead of queen g5. And now we're going to take the rook. White cannot make two moves to try to take bishop and the knight on c3. Well, one move is to take the knight, the other is to take the bishop. They are both very good for white. Queen takes d4, and now if queen takes g2, white may simply castle. And if pawn takes c3, again, white has to make a couple very, very accurate moves. And they are queen takes d8, rook takes d8, and b4. This is the only move in order not to get in trouble. Something like bishop f3 may end up very badly for white. So the correct move here is b4, and after knight e6, we may go bishop c6. That's also a very important move because we want to play b5 next and castle. Now white is simply winning. But the better move here is rook b8. And in my opinion, white still has some advantage after queen takes d5. Now this, white actually has queen takes d5 is one move, knight d2 is the other move, knight c3 is the third move. All three continuations give white some small advantage. Actually, you can go on and try either one of them. They give equally small advantage, so it's okay for white to play. And we don't want to go and analyze all three continuations, and because it's very easy to do with any engine you have, computer engine in Fritz, Ripka, or IR, so whatever, they will all, in positions like this, they are all equally good because it's positions where concrete variations and no engine has an advantage. They calculate equally well, and they, unfortunately, they all calculate better than us. So we should listen to them, what they have to say. But I'm going to tell you that knight c3, knight d2, and queen takes d5, they are all very acceptable for white and give them a small advantage. Even the move like queen d4 is okay here. So now let's go back, and that will more or less cover, actually, not more or less, that will cover our bishop c5 continuation.